And Harold, welcome back. We have some people that already want to ask some questions of you. So I'm going to ask you to unmute at this time, Harold. And from my memory, I believe that I share the screen. Harold, welcome back to F.A.C.E.
Oh, I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, great to have you. So
you mentioned,
go ahead.
You just mentioned Pippa, my daughter. Yeah. She's off, in her own trajectory with somewhat different background. Spent a lot of time in currency trading, in banking, but we talk back and forth. A father-daughter thing. You would be amazed that we differ on many things. We come out the same on other things. Very stimulating. And recently, to my surprise, several universities around the world have asked if we could do a joint lecture series.
Oh, that'd be fun, huh?
Yeah, and the one that hit me, just out of the blue was Texas A&M. We said we do, we said we'd do it, but couldn't do it during football season so we can watch your game. But they said no, I'd have to do it in the spring anyway. We tend to stimulate each other, and as you know, I don't try to pick stocks or the next movement for trading. And so we won't talk about that today. But
okay, I didn't know this, but we also have a pretty sophisticated audience, and someone wanted me to ask you about your influence on the Plaza Accord.
Yes, well, I was out of government at that time, but intimately involved for the reason that I was very close personally with the Japanese Prime Minister, Takeshita, and the finance ministry. So, and they played a very large balancing role at that moment. Jim Baker dominating with his aide, Richard Darman. No one could get to them except at the highest level. And I had many people asking me to intermediate between the Japanese Prime Minister and the Finance Ministry with Baker. And Baker's right-hand man was on the phone with me constantly because I was able to guide the Japanese responses. So anyway, it's a long story.
It's an interesting story. Let me ask you this, Harold. Do you think that Jim Baker was really the president when he was Secretary of State?
Yeah. When he was Chief of Staff for Reagan, he was the president. And then when he moved to Treasury, he was still the president. And then when he moved to State, he just brought the world into his realm, but he sort of became king of the world.
That's the way it appeared to me back then. And when I didn't know anything. I still don't know much, Harold, but I'd like to know and learn from you. What's on your radar? I remember last time we talked, we were actually addressing the fiscal stimulus package. Would they be able to get it done? And I don't know, at that time, we knew it was going to be the Democrats that were going to be the problem and holding together the coalition. And you thought that they might engineer possibly a stock market decline to create some urgency for them to pass something. What do you think is going to happen now? Is they going to get something skinny here or nothing at all?
Something skinny.
Okay. How skinny? Under 3 total?
Yes.
For both.
Under 3. Yes. No, with both it'll be more like 2.5. But with the infrastructure and the it'll be something close to what Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, wants. But it's not smooth. I mean, it's not clear. Pelosi has control of the House Democrats. They're deeply divided, and
Right.
then the Senate. We have two
Right.
Democratic senators on their own agenda, so it's very messy. But what I'd like to talk about is a simple thing that I've been thinking about. We have all this excitement now about what will happen politically in terms of stimulus, and then when will this pandemic end, and how will that recovery take place? And then we have another overlay of supply chain breakdowns worldwide. And how does this all fit together? And I wrote a note to myself, too many moving parts. We've never had so many different things in motion all at once.
It's like a juggler normally juggles 3 balls, and it's like, 12.
Yeah. And it reminded me of Lyndon Johnson in a meeting I was sitting in when someone was complaining about too many issues at once. And he said, if you want to live in the world of power, you have to be able to juggle many balls in the air at the same time without losing your own.
That's a great one. So I was around, you were around, everyone drawing parallels with what we're seeing now with the 70s, but the 70s, it really wasn't any supply chain issues.
Right.
It was more about, wasn't it more about currency debasement and people just wanting to own intrinsic value than what's happening today?
Yes. Yeah, we're far away from there. And I was listening to myself. We've got an underlying industrial cycle that everybody seems to have forgotten. In the second half of 2009,
well, because of the Fed.
It's in the end of 2009.
Every cycle.
Yes, every cycle. But the Fed has been trying to prevent the downside of every cycle. I mean, so it's become confusing.
Right.
But end of 2019, everybody's forgotten. We were, the IMF said flatly, we were entering synchronized global industrial contraction. And then, the pandemic came along and everybody forgot about that. I call everybody's attention to the figures yesterday from South Korea. South Korea's GDP growth for the third quarter is now expected to be 0.3% growth rate. That's like almost no growth. And why is that important? It's a canary in the mine shaft kind of thing. They're among the 4 biggest export-dependent economies in the world. And quite obviously, what's happening is the orders for manufacturers have really trailed off. So it's arguing that world industry is slowing down. And let's just not forget that, because Japan, Germany, China, South Korea, they are the most export-dependent economies, and they're all going to suffer lower demand for manufacturers. It's part of it is obvious. It's automotive, but a big change. I think we're entering a major slowdown in this last half of this year. So that's one big cycle that's overlaid on all this other stuff. And it shouldn't be forgotten because it affects capital spending. Now we've got.
Okay, well, all right. I just want to stop you there. So if we're going to have that kind of economic weakness, and we're already in the middle of it, And the Fed is shifting. I'm not saying they're tightening, but they're going to stop. I think they could stop buying MBSs. I don't think the real estate market needs much support when people get in line with bags of cash to pay over the listing price. So, so if that kind of could, and I've talked to others, they're a little concerned about that. Instead of being expansionary when we're going into this slowdown, that the Fed for the first time will not be, pushing back on that weakness, that they're actually going to, even though they may not raise rates for a while, they're kind of joining in the downside momentum by not giving as much support through QE. Does that worry you too?
It does. Their thinking is always runs about 6 to 9 months late.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been watching Fed for decades, and they're always, they're always right, but way too late. So,
except with their own money, I never knew. I never knew that they're the Fed, governors and chairmen were such great traders.
Look, there's a scandal there. I knew well Volcker, I mean, really well, and Alan Greenspan. I sat many times with them when they would moan that they had put all their money, all their assets into the shortest maturity T-bills.
Yeah.
And they said nobody at the Fed should ever own anything tradable. They shouldn't own stocks, commodities, even real estate. They should be taken care of because they'd be biased. And now we come along and we see everybody's in the game. I mean, it's like, it's appalling. And
it's a charade.
And all of these governors who are trading, they already have money. They don't really need to skim in the job. I mean, they could just wait a little bit until they got back out.
There are a lot of people that have been talking about abolishing the Fed for a long time. You think that'll ever happen? Or are they too powerful? They're too powerful, aren't they?
Yeah. And they're an extension, I put it crudely, of Goldman Sachs. There's too much money involved. But there is an issue of whether they should keep their regulatory role, or whether that should be taken away from them, the New York Fed and the regulatory side, and merge with the F.A.C.E. That I think is a possibility in the next few years. Just leave them with the money, but get out, because they failed completely to address the banking regulation when we had the Lehman crisis and the great financial crisis. I mean, they moved on QE, but they literally did a terrible job on cleaning up the banks.
Yeah. So, but everyone thinks, our banks are okay now, Harold.
I know.
Except maybe Sheila Bair came out the other day and said she's worried about the Fed if they move too quickly.
Well, I think she's one of the best people around, and I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Why don't we get back to supply chain issues? President Biden's attempt to rectify it by just extending hours at the ports. Why are you laughing, buddy? All right. So, I'm President Biden. Tell me how to fix the supply chain issues, please, Harold, before the midterms. Help me.
Yeah, well, can't be done before the midterms. It's going to take 2 or 3 years, and so we're going to.
That's not good news, Harold.
No. Second thing, the only way you can deal with this, because it involves maritime management, it involves port management, which is usually local, the railroad management, the trucker problem.
Yeah,
we need a Secretary of Transportation. There's one there, but no one remembers his name because he's on leave.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg, I believe.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't remember people who don't matter.
Yeah.
But But
All right.
but the thing is, you need somebody. The president just appointed a maritime administrator, and it turns out it's somebody who knows nothing about port management or merchant carriers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nobody there around the president who understands the complexity.
Yeah.
So, uh, you know, it's not just a matter of fixing the trucker situation or the hours of opening of any port. It's the loading, unloading, this where you put the the big containers. Um, Local rules against you can't pile them up more than 2 high when they need to pile them up about 10 high.
Yeah. Someone told me they saw a news report about some of these containers during the storm falling off the ships.
Yep. There's
And
some
just,
nice photos of
they're
that.
very toxic, just floating around in the ocean right now.
Yep.
And our Christmas. Okay. Here's the most important question I had for you today. Since, we're in this energy crunch.
Yeah.
What will Santa Claus substitute for coal to put in bad little boy and bad little girl stockings?
Well, there's a shortage of coal.
Natural gas, or that's more. What's he going to do? So,
well, that's a political decision. But we should be using much more natural gas because it's cheap. It was cheap. But now when Biden came in, he started putting lid not only on coal, but on pipelines for gas, refineries, drilling. I mean, he's made the situation much worse. So the part of the escalation of price is OPEC, but a large part of it is moving on getting rid of fossil fuels too fast before before we're ready with renewables. And we won't be ready for renewables for several more years. Because the big thing we need to do is build more nuclear power plants.
The uranium market. In fact, your friend Tracy made her first foray into a uranium issue. Talked about it this week.
I think you're spot on. I listened to her yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people, it's green as long as there's not a meltdown, right? Yes. Carbon footprint from nuclear is pretty low or zero.
Yeah, I'm the leading expert in the Department of Energy is a friend of mine. I've reviewed it in depth with him, and he said, "Look, we burn almost all the fuel now. There's very little waste. The plants have become far more efficient. Okay. So the waste problem is no longer a problem, and we also know how to make small reactors, big reactors. We can even make reactors that we can drop from the air to take care of Marines established, deployed in northern Norway that will take care of power needs for them for 5 years. In other words, if you're talking about a tiny module they can drop from the air and it runs 5 years or more. They make them big and they make them small.
I'd like a small one. I'm in California, tired of brownouts.
Yeah, absolutely. Local governments should be really all in and developing these smaller units to back up the systems. Okay. So that's in motion, and it's just the fear, the public fear of, oh gosh, waste. That's history. By the way, we can make these smaller reactors by 3D printing.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So after they get through with my kidney, they could print out a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, we thought, 3D printing would be body parts.
Yeah.
And toys. And now
it's amazing.
They're doing all kinds of things, but I tell you what at the heart is new, not only new materials, but we can make a 3D printer roughly 12 feet high. So they can build residential complexes with 3D printing now, and they are doing that in Texas.
Got a brave new world, Harold.
Entirely different.
Yeah.
Okay, but now let's take that and think about supply chains. We're not going to just reverse the supply chains or just move them from point A to point B. We are going to change the supply chains. A lot of things are going to be made locally.
Yeah.
Shorter supply chains. We're going to move earth like iron ore much less, because we're going to use new materials that are stronger than steel, and we can develop them locally. We don't need to dig up the earth. The non-renewables are going to decline in demand slowly. So all of this
like
is
copper you're talking about?
Copper may be the one exception because it's so critical for moving electrical energy around. So that one may remain stronger, but a lot of the basics are demand is going to decrease. So now there's one other element. There's this BS argument about offshoring. Everything went away during the 80s and 90s. While everything, a lot of companies were going to China, but during that time, everybody's forgotten who moved to the U.S. was Toyota, leading other Japanese manufacturers to a major position inside the U.S. market. We had reshoring or inshoring, whatever you want to call it, going on in parallel with outshoring. And now we got, I think I mentioned this with you before, the German automakers wanting to copy what the Japanese did and move a lot of what they do in Dusseldorf and do it in Alabama.
Why?
So, well, because in Germany, the economic outlook is heavy. You got labor on the boards. The taxes are going to rise. It's not, Germany's outlook is grim. And coming to Alabama, all the German executives are thinking we can do what Toyota did and be successful. We can use that as an export platform for supplying Latin America and even China from the U.S. And we can also play golf. We have outdoors, and Germany is not going to be a good place to live.
Okay, so still more constructive, the U.S. despite all our problems compared to Europe.
I think relative to Europe and China is in trouble. Europe's in really big trouble, especially Western Europe. And the U.S. may have a slowdown, but we're going to be the least ugly. We'll get preference, and the dollar will get preference because everything else looks so bad in the next 2 or 3 years. And this process. Okay,
so you're not a dollar bear. I mean, there are a lot of dollar bears out there that say, that's one tool to, do you think that and there are people saying the dollar could really explode, that milkshake theory because of emerging market debt? Which way do you fall down on this?
Well, I've been, at the beginning of this year, I was asked where would the dollar be at the end, and I said dollar would be higher, and many people thought I was a little bit, off.
Great call.
But that to me was clear. If you ask me at the end of next year, a dollar will be higher than it is now. It's a slow process. It's not going to happen, suddenly.
Okay.
But dollar will look less ugly, but it has one other element that everybody's overlooking. The euro-dollar market, that is the borrowing and lending outside the control of the US and the British, is huge. And all of that lending is collateral-based lending, and the collateral base is dollar instruments, dollar securities. and the leverage of borrowing is huge. It's not 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1. It's probably 10 to 1.
Okay.
So
they would want a weaker dollar, wouldn't they? Easier to service the debt. So the worst case scenario is a stronger dollar.
Yeah, well, they can't. They can sell every dollar asset they have, but it won't be enough. So there'll be huge demand for dollar assets in the next 2 or 3 years. And that tells you something about the bond outlook too. Yields can go up for now, but there's going to be a shortage of liquid dollars out there. And it's going to be, and if we have it slow down.
Sounds deflationary to me, Harold.
Yes, I believe that we have stagflation sort of now, but we've got deflation coming.
Okay, I want to wrap it with the last question. Do you think that our Congress is dysfunctional enough for us to have our first default in early December?
No,
they'll just do the
they'll
dance.
do some kind of shuffle, or they'll redefine what the limit is. It's anyway, it's theoretical that we have a limit.
Yeah, it is. They may try and just get rid of it.
Yeah. Where we are now, think about this horrific outlook that I see politically. We have very strong likelihood that the country is swinging a little bit slowly towards Republicans. So in 2022, we're going to have Republicans dominating the House, maybe even the Senate, but certainly the House. So
he's Jim. Some people are calling President Biden Jimmy Biden. So he's going to be a lame duck 2 years into his first term.
Yes.
And so what happens is that good for America? You can't do any more damage.
No more damage, but we're going to be frozen in what we're doing about climate change, doing all the wrong things, moving ahead, we're getting rid of fossil fuel, but not replacing it with anything new. It's going to be, an unhappy, prolonged period.
Are our shelves going to be empty at the grocery stores? I can't find some of my favorite food items even at Walmart now.
Let me separate food from everything else. Right now, Costco can't even find toilet paper to be. Well, they warned about it. It'll be different shortages at different times depending on where the cycle is.
I heard the DEA made a big bust. They found 100 semiconductors buried in a kilo of cocaine.
Yeah.
That's a big bust for them.
I don't know if it's true, but it's plausible.
Well, we've run out of time. I could talk to you for hours, Harold.
Let me remind up one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
We got problems with food several times. One is droughts in some countries, flooding. There's a shortage of food out there, and we have one thing nobody's thinking about. It's the solar cycle. We have started a downturn at least 11 years in global cooling, and it's going to affect crops. So we're going to have tight food conditions for a decade ahead.
I never would have thought that you would have brought up the solar cycle and the inactivity. There are some people talking about the potential of a mini ice age. Wouldn't that be ironic in the middle of people worried about global warming?
Yeah, well, yes, but I myself have been talking about this now for 2 years, that this is this looks not speculative. It looks to me a certainty.
You think we will have a mini ice age? Like they had, just cold.
The mini ice age. We're expecting a traditional solar cycle of 11 years down and 11 years back up, but no one knows if it might be a longer one. If it's a longer one, it's going to be really bad for Northern Europe, Canada, China. So that nobody's paying attention to it, but it's real. And the average temperatures in Antarctica in the last 6 months are the lowest ever recorded. So
no one talks about that.
No. So just everybody think about that. Food is going to be expensive far into the future. It's going to create lots of problems with low-income workers who won't be able to, a lot of unrest.
All right, Harold, a real interesting way to end it with a climate forecast from you. And thank you so much for your giving spirit and sharing your views with us. I look forward to talking to you a little bit down the road, and maybe you could do us a favor. Maybe Pippa would like to talk to us here on this platform.
Yeah, I'll talk to her. Yeah.
Okay, and maybe we could have you both together sometime.
Yeah. Well, right. We do joint things. Anyway, great to talk to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed. I'm glad our paths crossed on Twitter, Harold. Really,
yeah, it's strange. I mean, Twitter was, I just fell into Twitter for, at the time, and I was having cancer treatment, and I was physically not fit, and so Pippa said, "Why don't you play with Twitter, because you can put out thoughts all day?" And that's all I did. I never used it to sell anything,
right?
But I got sort of interested. Now I've got a following, and I got a huge amount of hits every month now. So I find it fun, stimulating, and I speak what I think. So nobody's, I have no hidden agenda. So I have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, it does provide a service to get an unbiased opinion for someone that doesn't have. Most people on there are selling something, so you don't have an axe to grind out there.
No.
And the FinTwit universe appreciates that. I know they do, Harold. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, great to talk to you.
All right, everyone, that's Harold Malmgren, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. In 10 minutes, you could join the team on the Morning Edge. And remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Adios. Thank you, Lorena, Anthony. Glad you enjoyed, Harold. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with ForexAnalytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.